And for those of you who just saw my mouth moving, I apologize. So I'm going to start over. Welcome back to our family town halls. It's been 2 weeks and we missed you and we hope you missed us too. Here in this space, we spend about an hour each week talking about matters related to the opening of schools, as well as back to school, technology, special education, meals, devices, you name it. We're here to try to answer your questions and to be good partners for you. Usually I have a co-host, but we're doing something a little bit different as we restart our town halls. You're going to get me at the beginning, just welcoming you, but in the background, I have a host of experts. You gotta believe me. I have members of our leadership, uh, the folks who are just in the trenches fighting for our kids and making sure they have every opportunity to succeed in this virtual environment and beyond. But before we get started tonight, as usual, we just have a couple of ground rules. The first ground rule is if you have a question, please submit it in the comments section on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. Those questions will make it up to me, and I will pass those questions to my cadre of experts who will jump on and answer any question you may have. Additionally, we want you to be positive tonight. There's been a lot going on in the district. We've had a pretty good opening week of school. We're in week number 2 now. Things tend to go well, but nothing's perfect. So we're going to answer those questions and try to show you when things aren't going as well as they could go, how we're going to make them better. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I just want to hop to it so we can answer some questions because I know after 2 weeks, you all have had a few saved up for us. So I am going to jump into my questions and see what we have. So our first question is, read the wrong question. You have to forgive me. Our first question is from Gretchen Nelson on Facebook. Gretchen asked, she says, I believe that city schools should continue with virtual learning until the first of the year. Now, while that's not a question, I believe it is something we can talk about. And I'm going to call our Chief of Staff, Allison Perkins Cohen, to the forefront. And Allison, I guess the question is, now that we started virtually, when will we talk about any possible transition to a more in-person environment?
So thanks, Andre. Good to be here. Good to see you. We have said that we would make an announcement about in-person learning or hybrid by October 16th, and we will do that. Right now, we are working on various ways to provide some in-person opportunities for small group instruction. So you may have heard that we're opening some student learning centers that will be 15 student learning centers across the city that will be places for students to go to have a safe place. That's not instruction, but that will be a place where they can go where there will be an adult, they'll be in small groups or pods where they can, with headsets and computers, access their virtual learning where there's Wi-Fi and an adult to supervise them and meals. And at their break times, we're partnering with Rec and Park, so those students will be able to go over to the Rec and Parks area at their break times to engage in activities with the Rec and Park staff. In addition, some at those sites and some at other sites, we're looking at creating opportunities for small group instruction for students who we know aren't served well in a virtual environment. There are some students who we really know we need to have some in-person interactions with, and so we are creating some in-person opportunities again in small group for English language learners. Some of them will be at those student learning centers, and some of them will be in some other locations, and also for students with disabilities. Again, we are continuing to kind of think about ways that we could have small group instruction for students, and particularly focusing on students we didn't serve well in virtual learning. So those could be students who have not engaged effectively in student learning. I mean, in the virtual learning, it could be students like early learners who we know it's really hard to teach things like reading virtually. So we're thinking about how do we create some opportunities in person for some of our early learners. Or it could be something like, oh, my screen's falling down. It could be something like CTE. So we're trying to think of the ways in which we could create opportunities for students in small settings. In terms of broader opening, we're still looking at that. We, again, will make an announcement before October 16th, but in the immediate sense, everybody is virtual right now, and we're creating some very small opportunities for in-person instruction for certain groups of students, and that's kind of what we'll be working on in the near future.
All right, thank you, Allison. Stay with me because I have I wouldn't call it a follow-up because it's totally unrelated to that question. Another question we have is here on Facebook, and I definitely did not want to ignore this one because it's to the crux to virtual learning. From Arita Dorsey. Arita asked, city schools, why are we still without enough devices when we knew in May? Arita, thank you for your question. Allison, where are we with the device distribution at this point?
Yeah, so I really appreciate the question, and it's a really important question. So we've been working really hard to get devices for students, and our schools throughout the summer, we did device distribution centrally, and then for the last several weeks, schools have been doing distributions out of their own sites. At this point, we've distributed about 35,000 devices to students and about another 5,000 hotspots. We have more devices coming into schools all the time. We are a little bit behind in where we are in terms of getting devices into schools because of supply chain disruptions that were caused by trade sanctions. So like many districts across the country, we are primarily using Chromebooks, and one of the main providers of Chromebooks to the United States there was tariffs, or there was trade sanctions placed on them. So a number of devices were sent back to China. And so like many school systems in the country, that really disrupted orders that we had that were going to come before school started and got delayed. We were very fortunate because we learned about those sanctions very early and were able to identify replacement orders. And so we have those devices coming in, they have been coming in, and they're continuing to come in the next few weeks. We know of many school districts who they're now back ordered till November or December. I even heard a district who can't get devices until January. So we're very fortunate that they're coming in, but this was not a Baltimore City issue. This was a national issue related to trade sanctions that has impacted us. And again, we feel fortunate that we're not as delayed as others. For students who don't have their device now, so devices like this week, another 5,000 devices are being shipped out to schools. So if you spoke to your school before and they indicated that they were out of devices, you should reach out to them again because they're getting more replenished this week. They'll get another shipment of about 5,000 distributed to schools next week. So again, keep checking back with them to make sure you can get a device from your school. And the other point I really want to make is to please remember to ask for hotspots too, if you need those. We do have a lot of hotspots on hand too that would allow your child to access the internet. And so if you have connectivity challenges at home, which a lot of families do, and it's hard for, like, when you have if you have multiple children online, it makes it hard to access the internet. And so if you need a hotspot, please also ask your school for hotspots because we have a lot of those on hand too. So in the meantime, if your child does not have a device, You will not be marked absent. You will not be penalized for that because we know of this disruption is disrupting students' ability to engage. But then, we hope to get you a device really soon. So please keep getting in touch with your school, and then we'll get you a device as soon as we can. And we should be getting them to you pretty quickly in the next couple weeks.
Thank you, Allison. And you've got a friend joining you. You have Tina Hike Hubbard, my chief, but more formally, the chief of communications, engagement, and enrollment. I should know that, but it's a really long title. Allison just mentioned internet access, Tina, and we've got a lot going on in that area. Can you share a little bit about our work with Comcast and others to provide access opportunities for families?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andre, for letting me add this. So the past board meeting, the district approved a contract with Comcast Internet Essentials. Coming soon, you will get information on how to get sponsored by city schools to extend your Comcast agreement. So if you joined with the Comcast Internet Essentials when the buildings closed back in March or even over the summer months, city schools is now going to agree to sponsor all students, all households who are with city schools on Comcast Internet Essentials. So you can continue that. So it's an alternative to the hotspot. You already have the broadband at home. We would identify yourself to the schools, your home school, and we'll sponsor you. If you have not signed up yet, you still have the opportunity through December 31st to sign up for Comcast Internet Essentials. The information will be on our website. You can also ask your home school on how to do this. But once you sign on for that, once your 2 months free are over, city schools will continue to sponsor your service with Comcast through September of 2021. So I want to make sure that folks know there's the hotspot route, but if you already have Internet Essentials, we'll continue to sponsor you on that. Just flag it for your school. And if you're not on yet and want to, call Comcast, get set up for Internet Essentials, and we'll sponsor you once your 2 months free are over through September of 2021.
Thank you, Tina. And if you want to find out more information about that, early next week, once we get a few things tidied up, visit us on www.baltimorecityschools.org. We're going to post information there about how you can get sponsored for the Internet Essentials program. And again, try to close the gap between students that maybe have devices but don't have internet access and those who don't. We want to make sure that everybody has a great opportunity to learn. And this is one way that your Baltimore City Public Schools is doing it. Now, before I get to another question related to IT, I just saw this really funny question on Facebook from Andrew Hurd. And Andrew, you asked, well, if going back to school is so safe, why are you guys having a virtual town hall? And I think the best answer is, Andrew, trying to socially distance 40 people at any one time and have them participate in a virtual town hall. It gets a bit challenging. I don't think you'd have the greatest experience. But thank you for asking. I just wanted to let you know I'm watching too. I see what you guys are saying. Now, Michael Rading, our IT Director of Support. Hi, Michael. I tear up your title pretty much, so my apologies for that. But Michael, you know the question that's coming. Today was a big day here in city schools. And my friend, let me pull her name up, Rachel Marie on Facebook, she asked, why did y'all switch out from Zoom? I don't think we switched out from Zoom today, Michael, but what did we do?
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to answer this question, Andre. So we are still using Zoom as our online platform. One of the changes we made today is to require that that all students sign in and authenticate into Zoom before they're able to join a classroom. And the main reason we did this is just our focus on trying to ensure that online spaces are safe, just so in the same way we were in physical spaces before, and ensuring that we created safe spaces for students, we want to do the same thing even as we go virtual. And so one of the best ways to do this is to do the change that we did, which required that before anyone could be admitted to a classroom, that they were an authenticated user in our environment. And so what this does is just ensure that only only our teachers, only our students, and only other folks who are authorized to enter into classroom spaces in a virtual context are able to do so.
Thank you, Michael. Nice, succinct, and to answer the point. You know I'll probably be coming back to you, but I'll give you a pass for right now. Thank you, Michael. Now, we have a question about kindergarten that I can't answer, but I know who can. Our chief of schools / chief academic officer, John Davis. Hey, Chief Davis, how you doing?
I'm all right, Andre. How are you?
I am living the dream, Chief, living the dream. And one of the ways I'm doing that is by helping students that are in kindergarten. We have a question from Facebook that says, well, it's not really a question, it's more of a thought. This person feels that virtual learning keeps kindergarten students in front of a screen too long, or it gives them too much downtime and it bores them. They're wondering about ways that we can make virtual learning for kindergarten students developmentally appropriate. As you see this question, and you saw it in full, Chief, what are your thoughts about kindergarten development and virtual learning and how we provide it?
Yeah, so first I want to be very clear that in the developmentally appropriate context, we thought deeply about pre-kindergarten students and kindergarten students, and then in different grade bands above kindergarten students. For instance, our first through fifth graders are online for almost 4 hours. And I've been a little bit worried about first and second graders, for instance, that might be too long. I haven't heard any negative feedback so far from first and second grade parents, but I'm gonna try to make sure that I source out teachers and parents to kind of hear that experience. I say that because then you go to kindergarten and even pre-kindergarten, and we have much less time for screen time for them. And in fact, for kindergarten students, it's only 160 minutes. Now, you know, if you have a kindergartner, 160 minutes may be a long time, let's be honest about it. But it is more developmentally appropriate than what we're doing for first, second, you know, all the way up through fifth graders. Or we think that it is developmentally appropriate. We are trying to be very, very cognizant of the developmentally age appropriate materials and the activities. I would be very interested if that parent wants to email me at jldavis@bcps.k12.md.us because I want to hear what that 160 minutes are doing for the child. I will also say that there's a decent amount of asynchronous time because that asynchronous time can really be used in a lot of different ways, right? We have something called Amplify Online. And I'm making a big deal about that because the early literacy work is really, really important. We have to get our youngsters being able to know their sounds, being able to know their letters very fluently so that when they hit first grade, they're ready to go. And some of that Amplify Online work, which is asynchronous, it is a program, right, that parents can make sure their students and their youngsters do when they're not in front of a teacher, is super important. So we've tried to be developmentally appropriate. I want to get as much feedback as possible because if we have to tweak things in October or maybe at the end of the first quarter, then we'll do that. I want to also just say that every child is different and there's a lot of different experiences from families. So I appreciate what the writer said. And I would even ask them to email me and give me a longer perspective if they can.
All right, Chief Davis, we're going to share your email address in the comment section for that writer, but I've got some follow-ups as long as you're here. We seem to have a lot of academic related questions tonight. One from Sean Selassie. Sean asked, when will you provide kits for arts and crafts, project books, project kits, books, STEM kits, etc.?
Yeah, we've got a decent amount of materials coming in. I mean, I think the arts and crafts are a hard one, and I think it's a little bit more school by school. Janice Lane may want to jump in if I've been missing something, but I do want to also hit another question that I see around math workbooks, because some of our math workbooks will be coming in October, early October, and we'll be getting those out. I mean, I think some of the issues we have faced around devices is the same that we faced around supplies and getting stuff in a timely basis around materials. And so we completely acknowledge that. And I think our teachers have been doing a great job in their first unit to making sure that they can supply the needed materials. But in the end, right, we are going to have math workbooks, which was one question. We'll have wit and wisdom or ELA workbooks as well. Janice, what else can we add to that?
I think you covered most of those pieces, Chief Davis. There was also a question that came up around access to text. So we have also been able to order supplemental copies of text if a school doesn't have enough copies to give to students. We've worked with our teachers to make sure that there are some free accessible options out there. So whether they're partnerships that we've done with the library to make sure they have extra text, or places like the Bookmobile and other spaces where we've looked for text, but we also have done ordering of additional text that will be coming in late September, beginning of October with those shipments as you identified.
Thank you both for your questions, and thank you for being proactive, Chief Davis. I appreciate that. We've got some more academic questions that I'll get to in just a little bit, so stay tuned. We'll have you back up here in just a second. But for the moment, in the last week, we've really been encouraging students to make sure that they attend school. Why say in the last week? That's not really fair. We do it all the time, but especially in this virtual environment, we've really been working to encourage students to attend class every day. However, we know that there are circumstances where they may not be able to attend class, and we want to talk about what that means. Dr. Sarah Warren, how are you doing?
I'm great. Great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here, Dr. Warren. I guess the question, we've seen some questions in the chat about what if my student can't sign in? Or what if my student doesn't have a device? Or what if I have to miss a class? When it comes to attendance, are we penalizing students for not being able to, for having difficulties? We're not, but I'd like you to say it.
That's great. Yep. I'm glad you asked me that question. So first of all, we are prioritizing attendance, as you said. We always do, but we continue to do that even though it's a distance learning period. So we do set the expectation that students attend school 5 days a week and every class that they're enrolled in. But that said, we realize that this is not in any way a normal time. And so we have tried to build in some flexibility for those students and families who may have other extenuating circumstances that make it difficult to attend during the regular scheduled live sessions in the daytime. So if that occurs for you or your family, you need to reach out to your teacher and work it out with your teacher. They have the ability to recognize your student as present for a day if your child takes part in independent, or what we call asynchronous learning, outside of the normal class time. So they just need to find out from the teacher what the task is that they need to complete, and that task has to be submitted before the start of that same class the next day, and they can be counted present for that day. The other thing is that I want to emphasize, because we've had this question from a number of families, if a student is struggling and can't get online to attend for a given day because they don't have a computer or an internet connection, we are not holding that against that student from an attendance point of view. So we are, as we say, holding them harmless, which means we've got a special code that we use if we know that a student wasn't present on a given day because of technology. So they will not be marked as absent in the record. Did I answer that one, Andre?
You did, Dr. Warren. It just was taking me a while to get back to the screen. I appreciate you, and given the way things are going, I'm sure we're going to have some follow-up questions later, so please stay tuned.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Michael, can you come back to the forefront for me? We have some technology-related questions, and I certainly need your help. And of course, Michael, being the good guy he is, came right back. Thank you, Michael. So I've got a few questions. I'll pick the easiest ones first, and then we'll get to the more involved ones second. Michael, Janice Hyman from Facebook, she actually has two comments, and they both relate to signing in. She's saying, my high schooler can't sign into Zoom to be invited or join class. What needs to be done? So I guess my question to you is, if somebody's experiencing Zoom challenges signing into Zoom, what should they do?
So there's a couple of different avenues available to families. One of the things I should probably preface this statement with is we recognize in making the change that we made today that that was a big change from a family perspective. It wasn't a change that we took lightly. We deliberated on that a lot. And the decision was made just out of an abundance of caution and just with security and safety of our students and our families in mind. So with that being said, in terms of support mechanisms, families could definitely, one of the great resources that we have is our website. So through our website, we have distance learning resources that include how-to information, step-by-step directions on accessing our online platforms, including Zoom. With the change that we made, students are able to use their existing city schools credentials to sign on to Zoom, for instance. They would just need to go go into Clever, so clever.com, sign in with the city schools credentials, and then once they're in Clever, that presents to them multiple applications and options for them to get into, including Zoom. If they click on the Zoom option, it signs them in. It's a single sign-on, so with their city schools credentials, they're signed right into the application. In terms of other ways that families can get supports, we also have our IT Service Support Center. So we have a hotline for parents that they can call at 443-984-2001. That's available from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's another resource for parents. And then, of course, within Google Classroom or other avenues, if they're already signed into some applications, they should definitely reach out to their teachers as well for additional support.
Thank you, Michael. Stay with me because I have a follow-up question. All right, with the new Zoom login process, how can student teacher interns join their classes?
So we have made available to all teaching staff the Zoom application. They should have access to Zoom just by virtue of being the position they're in, being a teacher. If anyone has any issues from a staff perspective, there's also avenues for getting support. So teachers can use the registration feature for meetings, for instance. And if staff are having any issues, there's also the IT Service Support Center for them to get assistance on that as well.
Thank you, Michael. That's about it for now. You actually answered a couple questions in a row that we have received with your comprehensive comments, and I appreciate that. Way to be proactive. We'll see you in a little bit. All righty, let's go back to our list of questions. You all are pretty active tonight. We got a pretty good crowd. And we love it when you guys show up and you ask questions. Chief Davis, can you come back to the front because you answered one question academically? We received several more, which is great. Chief Davis, this may be a teacher because I'm not sure how it makes sense in other ways. What are we supposed to do when students don't do the asynchronous work?
If it is asynchronous work that a child is supposed to do, right, not just something that is extra, but has been a part of the lesson, then I think, right, you've got to follow up with the parent like you normally would. I think you've got to emphasize the importance in class. I think you've got to highlight the students that are doing the work and how that benefits them. The truth of the matter in this space is that, right, even though teachers are going above and beyond, this is a we thing. It's absolutely a we thing. I'm a parent of 3, 2 of my kids are still grade school, and I've got to make sure that I'm following up on their asynchronous work and what they need to do. And it's tough for parents at this time, right? It's tough for all of us at this time. So it is absolutely a we thing, which is what I kind of hear from the teacher. But the teachers also got to make sure that they have that type of communication and explain the importance. There's a lot of different aspects depending on what we're talking about, what the grade level is, what the subject is. But there are videos sometimes that have to be watched. There are some foundational things that really need to happen at home. But some of that asynchronous work has to be done at home in this space. So it's not just our normal block of literacy is an hour or two, right? And you can't just do that in this space. And so some of it has to be asynchronous. The teacher, the principal, we've just got to keep emphasizing it. And at the same time, having some compassion and empathy, because parents are in tough spaces as well. I know it as a parent. Many people on this line know it as well. But we just got to emphasize the importance and why, right? A lot of times people want to know the why. Why are we asking folks to do this? And then sometimes if they're not able to for some reason, that's why we have office hours. That's why maybe we can take kids in small groups and emphasize their work. If they haven't been able to get online, then bring them in a small group, right? Bring them during your office hours time. Have them come back and maybe show it to them then. We've just got to go above and beyond, and I'm not saying that person didn't, but there's just a lot of great communication we've got to have. We got to show the importance. We got to explain the why. We got to use our office hours. We got to do a lot so that we hit every child as best as we possibly can.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Stay with me because I've got, again, it's not a follow-up, it's just a separate question that's in your topic area. So let's swing around to it. Chief Davis, will there be any type of tutoring available for students?
There is a decent amount of tutoring, and I'll either ask Chief Hyde Hubbard or Janice Lane, because I feel like they know this landscape a little bit better than I do. And I'm just not sure what we've rolled out and what we're about to roll out.
I can jump in, Chief Davis. Good evening, everybody. Janice Lane, ED of Teaching and Learning. We actually do have quite a bit of tutoring services identified that will be launching very soon for students. We have some that has been ongoing, and we have some new tutoring that will start for K-5 students, where we'll be working with literacy tutors and local college tutors that will be working with our students. There's also tutoring available in some of that asynchronous work that Chief Davis was talking about earlier. So if your student is engaged with iReady Learning or Amplify Learning, there is an opportunity within that to work individually in programs to help recover or accelerate skills. But stay tuned, we'll have more information coming out very soon in the schools around actual tutoring sessions that will be available.
Thank you, Janice, as always, and thank you, Chief Davis. Dr. Warren, can you come back to the forefront? We have another question about attendance. And here she comes. Or maybe, there she is.
Sorry about that.
No, it's
I'm having
technology.
my own technology issues tonight.
So, Dr. Warren, we have a question about from Angela Gwen Johnson on Facebook. She asked, what about being marked late? With so many problems logging on, students shouldn't be able to be marked late. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, thanks, Angela. That's a great question. So we do, we're trying to stick to as close to a normal schedule as possible and the regular attendance marking. So technically students can be marked tardy, but also we know that we need to be a little bit flexible and understanding given all of the challenges. So, teachers have that discretion. If a student is just a little bit late because of a logon issue, they can still mark that student present. We would ask that if your child is going to be significantly late to school, that you go ahead and inform the teacher like you normally would if we were in a school building. That should have a written note, which you can submit by email. But if it's just a logon issue, I don't think we're going to make a big deal about that. We all know that we're in the middle of a crazy time. It's a pandemic, so yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Warren, as always. Again, this is a really important topic, making sure that folks understand the rules of the game when it comes to attendance. So thank you. Chief Perkins Colin, we've got quite a few questions related to devices as far as obtaining them, as well as regarding our back to school plans. And I need your help.
Sure.
All right. This one I got to be careful because I don't like to disparage our fellow LEAs. So, Chief Perkins Cohen, do we have a plan for reopening schools? And if so, does it look like the one in Baltimore County?
So we don't have a plan like Baltimore counties yet. As I said earlier, we are working on some small group instruction opportunities for students in, there's the Student Learning Center, the 15 sites that are serving as virtual, as places where students can access their virtual learning through headsets and their devices. And then, so that's not instruction, but then also at those sites, we will have some opportunities, small opportunities for English language learners to get some in-person instruction in small groups and students with disabilities. We will also have some sites in addition to those sites where there'll be some in-person opportunities for students with disabilities and English language learners. Those are the plans we have right now. We are continuing to look at whether there are other places we'd like to have some small group opportunities. So again, thinking about students who are not particularly logging into to the virtual learning, or not doing, or maybe not doing as well in the virtual environment, or early learners who it's helpful. I mean, there was a question earlier about screen time for early learners. We worry about that too. So can we create some in-person opportunities for early learners? Again, small groups, not across the board at this point, but we're talking about some small group opportunities for those students. So we're continuing to look at what we can do safely, and building on what we did in summer school. And during summer school, we did have in-person opportunities for English language learners, for students who were behind. And those were great experiences for the students, for the staff, for the families. And so we were able to do them safely and really provide high quality opportunities for students and families and staff. And so we're looking at building on that experience slowly and learning from it as we go, so we can do this safely.
Thank you, Chief. Now to an unrelated topic, but we've seen several variations of this particular question this evening. Right now, you mentioned earlier that we are working to obtain enough devices for our students as fast as we can and in the best way we can. But ultimately, it's hard to say by this date, hopefully that we have everything wrapped up. What can we tell parents that are saying, I'm worried because it's the second week of school, my student doesn't have a device yet, I'm getting a little, I'm getting nervous because I don't want my young person to fall behind. Is there a particular message that you could share with them, maybe of encouragement, to say, we're still working on it?
Yeah, we're still working on it. And I really do. Yeah, thanks for feeding me that one. We are working on it. I think we are getting, again, about 5,000 more devices went out to schools this week, and then about another 5,000 next week. Those are laptops. We also have hotspots on hand. And then, as Chief Hubbard mentioned, there's the access to the Comcast program and ability to support families who need help paying for the Internet Essentials program. So those are all ways we can support students. If your student is behind because they haven't gotten access to their computer yet, we will work with them. We are not going to penalize them from an attendance perspective. And then we will make sure that schools support those students in terms of getting the information they need to catch up. And so we're very cognizant of that. And again, it's through no fault of the students that we're in the situation, and certainly trade sanctions are through no fault of the student. So we need to figure out ways that we can support those students once they get the device, in terms of getting the kind of support they need to catch up with their peers.
Thank you, Chief. As always, I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Now, we have a question about scheduling, and I'm going to call Dr. Rachel Pfeiffer to the forefront because it's a pretty important question. Don't you think, Dr. Pfeiffer? Yes.
I do, and I am glad to hear this question about student schedules. So we know that scheduling just looks very different right now, and so each school has laid out their schedule for the school day that students should be able to. Most schools have posted it online, and certainly you can reach out to the school to get that specific schedule for what the day looks like, when classes start, when classes finish. But for student specific schedules, it's important that students reach out to their school counselor to get their specific schedule for when they're supposed to be in math, when they should be in English, etc. We want to make sure that every student gets to be able to be in the right class at the right time so they can get that live instruction. So reach out to the school counselor for the specific schedule, and that school counselor should be able to help with the school-wide schedule as well.
Thank you, Dr. Pfeiffer. Thanks for coming out and seeing us tonight. Dr. Warren, before we get to another academic related question, we have a very important topic. Even though we've gone back to school virtually, we still have some important requirements, including one about immunizations. And some folks are even asking, well, if you're in a virtual environment, why do I need immunizations? So, Dr. Warren, why do they need immunizations?
Another good question. Thank you, Andre. So as you stated, we need immunizations both because of health, right? We need to make sure that our children are immunized against all of the other potential diseases that are out there in the world. It's not just the COVID virus that we're worried about. So we need to make sure that we're all healthy and safe. That also contributes to our sort of collective well-being, what we call the herd immunity of the community. And it is a requirement of our state. So for students to attend school, they have to be immunized. And I know it seems a little strange because they'll be sitting on their couch in their living room learning for most students, but it is still a state requirement for us that we have to follow. We don't really have any way around that legal requirement. So we ask that all families check their students' immunization records. If the student is out of compliance, meaning they need immunizations, then we encourage you to quickly set up an appointment with either your child's primary care physician, or you can go to one of the city's health clinics. There are also some upcoming immunization clinics, free clinics happening with one of our university partners. And then we also have some school-based health clinics in city schools that are offering immunizations to students. So all of that information is on our website, and you can just go into the website and search for immunizations, and you'll find lots more detail there.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Yes, we've received several inquiries today, and that website, just in case you've never heard it before, is www.baltimorecity.schools.org. And finally, we have time for one last question before we close the show, and I'm going to call Janice Lane to the forefront because that's a pretty good question from Amy Pohl on Facebook. Janice, Amy asked, well, she says, my 5-year-old is having a lot of trouble using Nearpod and mousepad to draw and write things. Could he write or draw on a piece of paper? And can I submit via photo the work?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. We know that transitioning to the digital platform for some of our youngest learners takes a bit of time. One of the platforms that we have called Seesaw should be something that helps in that transition. We just were able to get access to all of our teachers actually yesterday and today for that work. So that should help in that transition. But absolutely, if you want to take pictures with your phone or tablet and upload those to the teacher will be able to give that student credit for the work that has been done. And I would also just continue to practice those skills as they will continue to grow as students engage with it. But again, I think Seesaw will be a huge help for that as well.
Thank you, Janice, as always, for coming out and helping us. I appreciate you. All right, everybody, we've neared the end of the show. It's now 6:47. We had a lot of great questions that we were able to answer tonight, and I noticed there were quite a few around special education. I do not want you to feel slighted if you're a member of that community or if you just had a question about special education. From time to time, depending on scheduling, some of our experts can't make it. So we're not able to always have somebody here to speak to every varied subject. However, I can tell you what we will do. We'll collect those questions, submit them to our special education department, and we will post them in the space where you post your question by this time tomorrow. So stay tuned. In the meantime, before we go, I made a promise to our family engagement team, and I want to keep it. They have an event that they would like you to come out to. So I'm going to pull this up on my screen because I don't like to misquote things that we're doing or misrepresent what we're doing here in city schools. And wouldn't you all know it, good old technology is not always your friend when you need it to be your friend. So give me 1 second. If I can't do this fairly quickly, I'm just going to post it. Okay, everybody, we're having a parent cafe and panel discussion on Wednesday, September 23rd from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. What is a parent cafe and panel discussion? It's an opportunity for you as parents or just members of the community to meet with experts and district staff to learn more about social emotional learning and how to build strong partnerships that support family wellness, which is key in this time where we're still all in our homes, all wearing masks, all adjusting to virtual learning. You're going to want to attend this. How do you register? Well, you can do it in 2 ways. You can either call our engagement office at 410-545-1870, or, and we'll post this in the chat so you can see it a little bit later, there's a special URL where you can register. And registering will make sure that you have space. So I would love you to do it. But again, we have a parent cafe and panel discussion on Wednesday, September 23rd from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Learn about social emotional learning and how to increase your family's wellness. We want to make sure we're providing ways for you to be as successful as you can be in this environment. So on behalf of city schools, my cadre of experts, and the best school communications team in all of Maryland, I am Andre Riley, your Director of Communications, and we will see you soon. Have a great evening.